really pepped up. And then to see that we still like so much, that's really challenging to me. But once again, great people, awesome people at these conferences that are geared up. We are making a difference, and it really energizes me. And it gets back to what Loran was mentioning about legacy. We think about that on our farm at home, and how things are going to be down the road. And we, much like you two on here with us, we want to do right by the soil and by the land, and leave that legacy behind us that says, hey, we done all we could do.
Yeah. And before I go into my first question with you guys, I want to throw something else out here. This takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, to travel the country or the world, tell your story, and trying to help people down this road of whatever you want to call it, regenerative or reduction of inputs, whatever you want to call it. So there's many, many more people out there doing great things. So yeah, thank you for everybody that goes out and spreads that word. Um, Jimmy, my first question is for you. I want you to tell the group a little bit more about where you are in the world. What's your altitude or your elevation, um, and give me some rainfall amounts on an average per year. And then what are your cocktails that you're planting, and how are you managing those cocktails?
So in Northwest Oklahoma, we're in that 18 to 20-inch rainfall, and I'll tell everybody that's give or take 18 or 20 inches, because we've had as low as 7 in 2012, and as high as 25.3
Oh, oh no.
in the month of May, and 4 crazy. So you got to be prepared. Warm season mixes will be in that 15 to 18 different species range, with all the brassicas and the grasses and the forbs and everything in there. And then we do a lot of mob grazing, rotational grazing on that in them fields, because most of that land we want to really improve and energize that. And so we use them cocktails to really build soil. And like I was telling them here today at the conference, if I really want to build that in a big hurry, then I'll just turn around and plant another cocktail mix in that of cool seasons, or another double warm if I have the time, and graze that out, because I am in the beef industry and the cattle industry, and so I never get enough green forage in front of me. So it's more challenging in this rainfall area than others. But once again, there are places like where I'm at in Idaho right now that's lower rainfall than I am. So uh, we make it work.
All right. So now, Jimmy. So
Rick, you're on mute.
okay. So Jimmy, when you're planting these cocktails, is your first thought, um, cattle are going to come to this field, or are you also got a plan for a cash crop? Because I know you raise cash crops. So go into that just a little bit. What crops are you raising? And I know the cattle give you outs, but are you always thinking of cattle first, or is it split on your farm? Just kind of go into that just a little more detail.
So we use the cattle on a lot of these acres as Plan B. We'll have in mind that we're going to raise a cash crop behind them covers. We use the cattle to utilize and recycle that biomass quicker and get that turned around. But sometimes the good Lord doesn't give us a rain when we need to, and if we're a little deficit, we'll continue grazing that until we take half. We don't want to take any more than half, and then we'll go to the strategy after that. So cattle are always plan A. If we're for slaughter and stuff, we want them on the really good grazing. We'll run them through in daily moves and you know, maybe twice a day if necessary to get that bloom and finish on them. In them acres, they would be the target number one. But normally my animals are
I think we may, I don't,
number
hey, Loran,
two.
Yeah.
let's move on to Loran. I
Emmons.
think he's got some technical
We
difficulties
all
there. Hey, Jimmy, we lost you for a little bit there, so if you don't mind, I'm going to move on to Loran. Your connection's a little weak right now. Okay, thank you. Hey, Loran, my first.
I'm back.
Okay, Loran, my first question to you is same thing. You know, what's your elevation there? Kind of your rainfall. I know you're in Northeast Iowa. And then after you talk about that, I want you to go into something that I've often thought about. I haven't really done a lot with because it's extremely difficult. But I want you to talk about raising cash crops in a perennial clover field or legume or whatever your choice is there in Iowa.
Okay, we're at 1,100 feet roughly, 43-degree north latitude, and 35 inches of liquid precip and another 36 of frozen precip. Probably the biggest key to what we're doing is usually I like to draw down the moisture profile in the spring with the cash crop, but we generally get that strong recharge about the late May into early June. So the reason for the perennials is it fits with that cycle. Even the relay cropping, you know, that's why it seems we can make it work, because the key is that recharge. It's either we drain it out, evaporate it out, or transpirate it out, and just using the crops as that extra moisture drawdown is better for me than actually pattern tiling more ground.
See, that's an interesting idea there. So if you would have known 10 years ago what you know today, would you have pattern tiled as many fields, or would you have just put tile in the areas that needed the tile?
I'll go back to all our land was tiled early 70s. So everything is too far apart.
Mm-hmm.
And that is essentially why I started doing cover crops and that. My goal was to grow more moisture out. And now we've evolved to the point, that worked for a long time. We were catching up, but now we've evolved to the point where we're actually back to our water holding capacity, and that is so high that we're starting to get more moisture seeps. So your average person would say, hey, I should have probably went and pattern tiled it. But that's why we're going to start pushing harder and harder. I think we're on the tip of the iceberg with the relay and companion cropping. I just need to figure out what crops more I can add to help pull more moisture down in our profile at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, we work so hard toward building aggregate stability, infiltration rates, water holding capacity. All of these things you're talking about are what you get rewarded for being soil health minded, being a steward of the land. That's everything you're talking about. So then when you get the dog days of summer, we all get dog days of summer everywhere.
Yep.
Your profile, you hope, is filled, the tank's full, and you can hopefully hang on for that 5 or 6 or 7 day stretch when you get those 95-degree days. So
yeah, and I would say this year we got tested the hardest I've ever been tested. We had 4 inches of moisture from the time of planting all the way until about black layer on corn.
Oh, wow.
And other than once we put nitrogen on, the corn did start showing a little stress, but like the soybeans, none of them showed stress all the way through the season.
Now go back. Let's go back just a little bit, Lauren. I want to go into this perennial thought again.
Yep.
Okay, are you strip tilling then? If you're going to plant corn into this perennial environment that you've got established, are you strip tilling or how are you getting that corn into the system?
Establishment on the cover crop would have started out like an interseed on the corn. So it's
Hmm.
going to be in between the rows to begin with.
Okay, so you've come out of one of your relay rotations, you're going into corn,
Yep,
and then you're interseeding that cover crop at V3, V4, V5.
correct. And then once we have that established, then we just keep kind of knocking it back every year with the in roll or stuff like that, just enough to stun it but not kill it. And that's a fine line. I mean, we have fields that we've maintained the clover since 2016.
Wow.
And now I think I've heard you even say it. Now we've got the seed bank up there
Mm-hmm.
where it's getting to where the clover, clover grows naturally in my area anyway. But now we've superseded that seed bank where I don't even need to seed much for covers right now. We're
Yeah.
kind of at the point where we're getting self-seeded covers and the cycle is just kicking.
Right. I've noticed at home and I'm in West Central Indiana. If you know where Champaign, Illinois is, come right into the Indiana line, and that's where I'm at, a little bit north. But I've known, and I don't know, I'll ask Jimmy this question in a minute, but I've noticed that where we've got the infrastructure and where we're grazing cattle, we're starting to get those low-lying Dutch white clovers are coming back. So that's telling you something that the cattle, their footprint, their saliva, their mode of action is stimulating those species again, and we're starting to get those without introducing them back into the system. So, you know, I think we're slowly building, all of us are slowly building these perennial systems. We have to learn how to manage them.
Well, and I
So,
think one thing a lot of us have been missing when we're trying to account for some of that is taking account for the native herd.
yes,
I threw that picture out yesterday on Twitter and that, there's 20, 30 deer mob grazing in the field.
yeah,
And ever since we started cover crop, our wildlife population has just blossomed.
right.
So
Oh,
that's key for me. Most people know that I can't be around livestock and that. So, we've got to start embracing what has been given to us. And, we talk about over managing stuff. Well, we can't overthink a lot of, even our livestock. Got to be
right,
careful, take account what we've got.
right. So now, Lauren, are you heading toward zero chemistry? Is that where you would like to go, or tell me about that?
Oh, I would like to get there, but I'm in no hurry to get there. I guess I'll put it that way. I want every tool in the toolbox. We do have some certified organic acres now,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm my biggest problem is I'm gone too much in the summertime, and I don't really have that secondary line of defense on the help side yet.
Yeah,
Hopefully I've got the son-in-law starting to look back at the food grade crops and that. I want to be, the timing and that is critical on some of that stuff. And if I book an appointment somewhere, I got to go to the appointment. I can't, so that's why I've had to back off on some of that stuff. But, we're going to keep pushing the limit. And, I hope somewhere along the line, that's where we get the regen labels and that, if somebody can we've been promised for years the nutrient density stuff and that. I know there's some pretty smart people working on that painlessly right now. They're focused on it. And if they
yep,
can help us get to where we actually need to be, I think that's the ticket I want to roll with if it comes. But, I'm going to keep pushing the boundaries on the organic side too. And,
yeah.
this year, I've got, we've got the enroll that in place, and we're gonna see how much we can get by without this year.
Yeah, you've got to be in your comfort zone. You've got to go slow, but yeah, I think we need to eliminate tillage and then we need to eliminate chemistry. So yeah.
Yep.
Now, Jimmy, I'd like to ask you, um, what, I mean, when I think of Oklahoma, I think cold, but I don't know if that's really true because you are so far south of me. But I want you to talk about that, but I want to know, I just talked about when we bring cattle in our region, we get these low-lying clovers. Do you see native grasses coming back? I mean, what do you see when you introduce those cattle?
Yeah, I mean, the native system is there, the seed bank is there. And once you open that up and give that opportunity for that to come back, and we get away from that chemistry, and we're getting close to zero, Rick. We're not there. We're
Yep.
kind of in between you and Loran probably. We still use a little, just as we have to. But as we get away from that, we start seeing them native species starting to come back and get into the system, and the animals there with their impact facilitate that and bring that on. So that's the exciting part. And we can be cold. We were down to 9 this morning, but we're going to be 50 something by Saturday. And we can be well over 100 in the summertime. So huge swings. We are further south than you, and our days are a little longer. Lauren and I talk about this a lot, the difference from his place to my place. But we have so much in common, despite where we're at, longitude and latitude on that. So amazing things you can do in the same system in a different locale.
Well, I always go back to the four principles of soil health, the original four, and they work around the world, anywhere. Well, I don't know about Antarctica, but they work just about anywhere around the world. Now, are you going to plant the same species that Lauren and I are going to plant? Probably not. So you're going to use different packages, different timing, different seasons, and you're going to try to work with Mother Nature instead of constantly working against her. So,
Yeah, you can't fight Mother Nature.
no, she will
Won't
humble
win.
you in a heartbeat. So it just happens that quick. Now, one of the things that I often talk about, um, this regenerative movement is farmer led, and I mentioned that at the beginning, and I'm in total agreement with that. But I think we've got a hole here we need to get filled, and that hole is a definition. Because if we don't know what our goal is, how do we all know where we need to be going? So we've got to come up with a definition that is going to be accepted not only from the producer, but the shipper, the processor, the retail plant, the consumer, everywhere along that food chain. We need to have a definition that becomes standard across the industry. Then we can start all heading toward that goal. So, and I want to tell the crowd, we have not rehearsed any of this. These guys don't know what I'm going to ask them. They don't know what these questions are going to be. So, Jimmy, my question to you is, give me your thought on what a definition of regenerative ag should be, or would you even call it that? What would you say?
Regenerative ag is rebuilding and restoring a degraded resource, I believe. And, I think that's plain, simple, and short, and to the point that we have to rebuild it and restore it because we degraded it. And so I think regen ag is the perfect definition of how we can get there and explain that, like you said, in a simple term that everybody can agree on. Of course, everybody looks at it differently, and,
Right.
and I may be in the minority on that.
No, no, that's okay. We're all entitled to our opinion, but if you look at the way we farm, we've taken everything away, no chemistry, no inputs, no nothing. And if you ask my definition, I would say it's got to be something over in those lines, but that's too drastic. That's too hard line. So I'm okay with that. Let's come back into the fold and let's get more in the middle here and let's get a definition. Lauren, what do you think about this concept?
I think the biggest thing with it, if we're going to set an artificial line, we've got to be very careful.
Yeah.
You know, the biggest thing I fear with setting that artificial line is there's a lot of people that try to shame people into things.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the three of us ain't going to do that.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to reach out and try to help that guy up. But, you know, I think that's where we all need to be looking at ourselves. If we're going to stand out here and say, hey, this is where the line is, we owe it to the people to help educate them to
That's
get
true.
to that point.
You
You
make
know, Derek Axton probably says it the best. He's utilizing regenerative practices. You know, I think there's testing that coming that will verify where we're at. But until we get to that point, I want to be very careful. You know, I've seen that backfire several times. And then on the flip side, industry seems to take words and exploit them.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just, I don't know. I struggle with that. You know, I didn't really consider myself a regenerative farmer until, you know, the key for me was when we've actually got soil tests that show that we're at or above native soils.
Yeah.
That gets me to the comfort level, but I don't want to use that to the point where, hey,
That's the
you
benchmark.
need to be here to be part, you know, I want to be inclusive, I guess would be the simplest way to put it.
Yeah, I understand your concern. If we do create a definition or somebody creates a definition, then that kind of it can shut some people out and turn people off. And I understand that. Um, but you know, the other way I look at this too. So let's say, guys, that we came up with this notion, whatever the definition is, you need to constantly be implementing the 4 principles of soil health, and you need to maximize that. Okay, so in 10 years of doing this, you've taken everything away. So are you? What then? You know, you have maxed it out. So let's take that same thinking process to these carbon markets now. So, you know, I think the carbon markets are in a position now where we all need to slow down just a little bit and let the dust settle, see who the players are, and get a little better handle on what the future really is going to look like. And I think the most important thing we have to realize is they're not going to save your farm. It's just another tool in your toolbox to add to your bottom line. So go ahead, Loran.
Well,
Run with that ball.
The biggest thing with the whole carbons deal is if you truly understand the carbon cycle, the whole ideal behind sequestering the carbon is to use it.
Yeah.
It's just once you get the system rolling, the more carbon you're sequestering, then you can start stockpiling that little bit. But you know, I'm not afraid to go on record and tell people I'm very skeptical of any carbon market right now, just for the simple fact I'm worried where we're going to go. You know, when you've been international in that, you start understanding what's happening in other countries. And I mean, we don't have to look that far. Look at Canada. You know, they went straight to the carbon tax.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the question I have, anybody that wants to buy my carbon is, okay, if I sell you my carbon and we go to a tax situation, where are we going to be? You know, are you going to sell me back my carbon for $15 a ton or whatever they're at? Or is it going to be the $100 a ton that people are telling that credit is actually worth?
Right. Yeah, I know. It's a tricky, slippery slope to be on. That's why I think we all need to just slow down and let, you know, the experts get this stuff figured out a little better. Jimmy,
Yep.
what do you think? Jimmy,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. I'm gonna turn my camera off here. I'm having some internet troubles issues. But yeah, I truly believe to stay on hold here a little bit. We had a big conversation about that here at the conference in Idaho today. And I agree with Loran. I don't want to sell something that I might need back. And I'm not for sure that everybody's got this carbon market figured out, how to measure it, how to have that model that's accurate. yet as well. And so I'm still on hold and just waiting and seeing. And I'm more worried about fixing my soil and just and moving forward with that. And if that gets figured out down the road and there's some opportunities, then maybe, but no hurry.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. So, um, boy, I just had a thought and I lost it, guys. That's what happens when you got too much going through your brain. Um, oh, I know what I want to talk about. I want to go into one of the things I get asked a lot is how do we combat pests if we're not willing to spray a product to target that one single species? And as most of us know, if we target that one species, we're going to wipe out thousands of beneficials. So I can't do that. So I always get asked, well, how do you deal with pest issues? So, Loran, tell me about what you think. Do you have pest issues? And if not, then what do you think is the reasons why?
I'm sure we've battled a few things, but so far, let's take the fungicide and that in the relay crop and that, just by changing the row pattern and that, we open up the canopy. So in theory, we shouldn't need a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing a lot healthier plants and all that. I would like to be the guy that's smart enough to talk bricks and all that, but I'm not. That's where I'm hoping somewhere along the line I attract a younger mind that can help exploit that. I mean, you touched on it earlier in the game. I'm an iron and steel guy.
Yeah.
I like building the equipment that helps us get to where we're going to need to be, but I also know I'm limited anymore. I'm enthralled with what I see some of these guys capable of doing, but my mindset's just not there. I'm hoping the younger
Yeah.
generation can help me get to that level. In the meantime, I'm going to watch like Jimmy with some of the stuff he's doing, Michael Thompson, some of the stuff he's doing. There's some guys doing some pretty neat stuff, and
Yeah.
I've got also to the point where I'm lazy. I don't have to know everything anymore. I can call the guy that knows it and say, hey, what do I do in this little instance? John Lundgren has been a great resource for a bunch of us.
Sure.
I'll never forget the time he showed up at our place and we were seeing all these lace wings and that, and they were eating the heck out of our brassicas and in the interseed cover crop, and a couple days later, boom, they were gone.
Mm-hmm.
That whole population shift, if you're patient, a lot of times it's just that extra day or two. You got to be watching them signs is the biggest
Yeah.
thing that I've seen.
But I think what I'm hearing here, Lauren, the undertone here is building soil health.
Yep.
You have to always be in the mindset of building soil health and heading more toward balance within your system. So when you get to those balance, I don't know if we'll ever totally be in balance, but yeah, I don't know. I don't understand the bricks either, but I do understand the concept. If the sugar levels go up, we're not going to have near as many pest problems.
Yep.
So, sometimes going up to 50,000 feet and looking down is okay. You build that tool that the rest of us can use across thousands of acres and let somebody else tell us about bricks or sap, like a John Kemp. I mean, he can tell us all we need to know about sap analysis. So, Jimmy, what do you think? What pest issues, what would be your number one pest in Oklahoma, and is it a concern for you?
Probably the number one pest is fall armyworms.
Okay.
But we really haven't had that big issue out where I'm at. In the properties that we've been in the longest and our soil health is the greatest, we just don't see the pressure in them healthy plants. It's the farms that we've rented later that we're still working on and trying to get them to a level where it needs to be. I did have to spray for some worms and some corn a couple of years ago, but I was also trying to cut back on my inputs on that corn, and I was starving it just a little at the wrong time and allowed that weakness And you know, when them plants aren't at their top peak of healthiness, there's a window there for a pest to move in. And so we really try to push them and give them every opportunity to be healthy. And then we just flat dab don't have the trouble. I haven't sprayed enough insecticides or any of that in quite a while, just rarely.
Yeah,
One of our biggest advantages I just thought of is we're kind of off cycle from everybody else.
yeah,
You know, everybody else in my neighborhood's growing corn.
yeah,
They're going to have corn pest problems. You know, I'm the only guy seriously growing rye or wheat in my neighborhood. How many disease issues am I going to have? You know, granted, that's what disease is what chased it away from Iowa. But if you're the only guy growing it right now, the disease cycle is going to be upset. And, you know, even on the beans that we're growing a different maturity on over half of our beans.
yeah.
So that kind of puts us off kilter and off cycle for aphids and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, and see, this is just great conversation because these are the things I think about. How can we change that sequence of that pest or that weed once we understand, what that pest's nature is, we try to then grow a crop that gets that out of sequence and we try to change that trigger point of whatever it is we're discussing. So it's just a constantly, again, trying to work with Mother Nature because she is telling us if we would just stop and see the signals that she's sending us. Gosh, there's so many things I got running through my brain here. What I really want to get out is I want to understand, I want the crowd to understand, we've got to go a little deeper here, guys, I need a rotation, Loran, out of what you're doing. And I want you to go all the way, you've got this special drill, you're drilling, I don't know, 2 or 3 rows, then you've got to skip, get into this relay. Cause I think this is really going to be important for what I call the northern states. Okay. So just give it all the way. Like I know nothing. Tell me how this is going to work.
Our relay setup evolved out of our interseeding corn setup. So I'm going to take you all the way back to about 2006 is when we started looking at the interseeding corn. You know, I started thinking back what our grandparents and stuff like that did, and I started researching all the way back to 1870s, 1880s. University of Tennessee had some of the best data.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I started trying to figure out how I was going to implement that on my farm, and we kind of started dabbling in the corn there. We were 100% corn on corn at that time. So the interseed was the easy fit. And it in reality, it took us till about 2012 to when we actually finally started hitting on what it was going to take to make it work.
Okay,
Now,
hey, Loran, hang on a second. Okay, this is relay, not double crop, correct?
This is the interseed yet. I'm getting to the relay.
Okay, you're on 30-inch corn?
30-inch corn. We're putting, at that time we were trying broadcast, we were trying, you name it. And about 2013, 14, I think it was when we finally figured out, hey, we got to flip the rows around and this and that. We made the first twin row drill.
Okay.
And that would coincide with about the time I met John Coots in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. He was doing the same thing with wheat. And I started thinking about it and I'm like, okay, we've got the drill, we've got this, we got that. 2014, I believe was the first time I went back to planting cereal grains since probably the early 80s. And I quickly realized that, the broad monocrop wheat or rye or stuff like that, followed by the big biomass cover crops, is not going to pay rent in my neighborhood.
It's not going to work. Yeah.
So we were testing a few things and, I was playing around planting the beans into the wheat and the rye and stuff like that. And finally it's like, well, okay, we got the interseed drill, we got this, we got that, boom. We had the system set up, ready to go. A lot of people worry, oh my gosh, we spent all this money on equipment. Well, that drill is, in 2016 is when we built the current drill we have. The key to that drill is it's versatile. It's not locked into one specific practice. I can do my interseeding, I can do my relay cropping, I can do the in-row rolling. Is the first 5 years of the in-row rolling was done with the drill.
Yeah.
We at that time, we were still putting on some P and K. We could P and K band, we could nitrogen band, all that with one drill. And for that drill, at that time I was down to 750 acres. It'd go over 3,000 acres a year and not hardly do any custom work.
How wide is this, Loran?
It's just a 30-foot drill, and it's just everything I do is 30-foot controlled traffic.
Okay.
Without knowing that, knowing exactly what controlled traffic was, we've been there since 2009 is when we officially signed on to it. But it's just everything I do is looking forward. Okay, here's where I'm at today. Where do I ultimately want to get?
Right.
And then I'll build into that. That's the biggest thing I try to emphasize to people when they see the pictures we show of today. Don't try to start there. A lot of times it took us 5 to 10 years to get to that.
Yeah.
I'll help you learn how we got there. I'll try to show you our mistakes, but don't be afraid to take time, and you're going to have to risk a little bit so you don't, sometimes you don't understand the mistake until you make it yourself.
Yeah.
And, I think that's the hardest part a lot of people have to understand as they're doing this stuff. People want answers from us. Well, a lot of the answers that are the most determining factor are the ones you make on the spur of the moment. I always tell everybody the key to my success has been my ability to run scenarios in my head. I'm constantly running what if scenarios. And I try to do that without panicking. If some people knew how far I planned on things, it'd scare them. But I don't stop.
Hey, Loran, it's like I say a lot. In 21, I went through the alphabet on plans and started over with capital letters.
Yeah, and I mean, we went through the big letters, the little letters, and into the numbered letters. And that's just there's no easy answers when you start going down this road. But the more of us that are doing it and sharing our ideals, we recognize those key things when somebody else is going to hit that train wreck.
Yeah.
And that's been the biggest thing. Avoiding the train wreck is the key to success.
Yeah, and we got to remember here, I've talked about the 4 principles of soil health. There's a 5th one in there called context. This is very, very important because, again, the principles work, but where are you in the world? And is what Rick's doing going to work in Jimmy's world? Probably not. Loran, you and I are a little closer in line, but you're still several miles north of me. I mean, I am right in line with the Iowa-Missouri border.
Yep.
So all of Iowa's north of me.
Yeah, I'm 200 miles north of that line.
Yeah. So that's not a huge amount, but it does make a difference. So we've got to keep all of this into perspective. We can't jeopardize the livelihood of our farms. We've got to constantly, listen to podcasts like this and all those other great ones out there and learn and go to conferences and I think what I like to think is, when we go speak somewhere, we're trying to get people to think and not necessarily do everything we're doing, but take 1 or 2 pieces and take it home. And the last thing that we're trying to do is offend anybody of the way they currently farm. That's not what we're about. We're trying to augment what they are currently doing. And that's what these conversations are for, to promote thinking and stimulate change, because change is good. So now, Jimmy, I want to go to you. Now, give the folks here a little idea about how sparse your rangelands are, what's your density levels, and what are your rules of grazing. Your quick, on the back of your hand, rules of grazing.
My basic rules of grazing is I'm not going to take more than half of anything that's out there. And it all depends on how much rainfall we're in. We're in a big dry period now. And so I got to be really careful about taking, 60%. I got to take 40% and leave 60 now. And so stock densities, that depends on my goal. If I'm trying to terminate a cover crop or use the animals, I use the higher stock densities. If I'm trying to just graze that and nip that off and move them cattle forward and trying to put big gain on cattle, I don't want to do that heavy trampling stock. I want to get the first bite and then move on. So the densities change with my goals, and it depends on if it's cow calf, if it's yearlings that I've got that I'm wanting to finish for the market. So I know I'm not answering that question, but
No, no.
it really depends.
You are answering this question perfectly because there is no set answer. It depends on what you have in front of you and what's coming in the future, which I know we don't all know what the future's bringing, but you know by looking at your herd if you've got 205 weights or if you've got 208 weights, and now you know where you need to be to finish those cattle out. So, no, your answer was exactly perfect. And again, I would venture to say, and I'm not an expert on grazing like you are, Jimmy, but I would venture to say that it's the same thing as the four principles of soil health with that context part. What you're talking about in Oklahoma, the same concepts work in Arkansas, but yet it's going to be on a different context, different species, different things like that. Is that safe to say?
Oh yeah, I mean it definitely depends on where you're at, in longitude, latitude, and moisture and temperature. If we're really wanting to fix and try to improve native rangeland, we'll do high stock density and daily moves. And do I do that every day on all my acres? No, I travel a lot. I just have Ginger and Carson at home, but we focus on one place at a time. We try to improve that and move on. We're still learning the system as well and how hard to push it and how hard to rest it. Heavy on, long periods of rest in desert areas works great. And we can increase our production that way. But, am I the best grazer yet? And do I have it all figured out? No, but I do have the principles down and the context. And I do have my locale figured out somewhat over the 50 years of knowledge that I've accumulated here of the failures behind me or the disappointments where I missed the bar and tried to learn that from that. And that's what I told them here today at the conference. It's not about focusing on what didn't work. It's focusing on how to fix what didn't work. What can we adapt and change to improve that and make it better outcome the next time. So that's really key, Rick. I don't have certain stock densities. It depends on the goals that I'm wanting for the day and setting up a cover crop rotation. It depends on what I'm doing after that cover crop, what cash crop or another crop. So very flexible on the go.
But Jimmy, I absolutely love that because you've got to stay flexible and you've got to be able to move with whatever's happening. That's why I know I say a lot of things a lot of times, but I want to drive this home. It's okay to have 30 plans. Don't think that that's a problem because too many times we hang our head and we're like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything right. No, you've got to understand that this is a constantly evolving, changing enigma. I mean, it just has a life of its own.
Yeah, and I really think that's where Loran and I really have become best friends and in this through our adversity and tragedies that we've had in our lives have driven us to have multiple plans and to never give up, to keep moving forward, regardless whether the fire department's calling and say, what do you want out of your house? Or your health. Don't let up. You come up with plan A, B, C, 27, 43, whatever it takes to move forward, moving forward. I think that's really what brought us together. We live so far apart, and but yet it's the same. And we agree on that. No matter what we're going to do, we want to move forward.
Yeah.
And the plan number is irrelevant. It's the moving target plan.
Right. I think
I would add to that. I think what gets a lot of people in trouble is pride. You know, they have this preconceived notion of success.
Mhm.
No, some days just surviving the day is success.
Yeah.
And you know, one of my biggest driving factors, you know, you don't know how bad things can get until you're just dang happy you got problems yet. When you walk out of a room and you're just glad you've got a problem, everything looks up from there. Trust me.
Yeah,
Well,
and I told them today here at the conference, you know, we have men as a whole have a problem saying that I'm wrong or I need to stop and ask directions. And I think that's really
on.
really a key that we admit sometimes the path that we were on was wrong and we need to redirect and go again. And for a lot of people, that's extremely hard. But once again, if you can survive the day and just glad to have a problem that you're still here and your family's still here and your home's still here, you learn to appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I think you're answering this one question that's come out of the audience is motivation. What, you guys have been doing this a long time, and I don't see either one of you slowing down anytime soon. Um, I'm going to start with you, Jimmy. I want you to really go deep here on this. What is motivating you to be this wacky crazy guy, because that's what I don't know. I imagine we get called a lot of things, and luckily I don't hear everything we get called, but wacky and crazy are okay to talk about here. Why do you do this, Jimmy?
You know, I get that asked a lot, and sometimes I can't answer it. It's an inner power or inner motivation that really energizes me that we can do better. When you look at the soil erosion rates across this country, and we're eroding 1.69 billion tons a year out of our fields and into our streams, that just lights a fire under me, Rick. That I can't let up. I mean, it's
Oh,
like, good grief, people. This is our livelihood of our country, of our world. And if we destroy our soil, we destroy ourselves. And so it's that burning drive that I just can't get my foot off the gas. I know we can do better. We have the technology. We have the ability to do better because I see us doing better. A lot of people, a lot of friends of ours are doing better, and we have stopped that. And the majority of the country can do that. But we're going to have to assist them, and we're going to have to encourage them and educate them how to do that better and change that mindset. And so I'm stepped on the gas as flat-footed as I can be and full speed ahead.
yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. Now, before I get to Lauren, I think unfortunately, guys, a farmer's success is based on yield. So many times it's all about yield, and that's the worst thing. It's like the carbon markets. Why are we doing this on carbon? Let's do it on something else. The water cycle, soil health score, something. But you know, if a farmer didn't win the county yield, he wasn't a success. I mean, there's so many other things that we can look at than that, and I think that's kind of what you're talking about, Jimmy. There's just, if you get into this mindset of where you are on this massive reduction of inputs, you no longer need that high-end yield because your ROI, which is your return on investment, is actually gaining over those situations where you are striving to maximize yield. So Loran, take that away. What's motivating you, and why are you still doing this?
I would say something I said a long time ago. I think a few of us are playing checkers, most are playing chess.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bigger picture in mind if you're playing chess. You always got to be thinking a couple moves ahead. If you're playing checkers, you're kind of just, okay, I go here, go here. What did I just describe? Your average American farmer.
Yeah.
If you don't want to measure things in yield and stuff like that, or return on investment or anything, you got to create your own playing field. Well, what have some of us done? We've created our own playing field. We are no longer, I can talk dollars per acre with the best of them. That was probably the hardest thing over in Ukraine. They are so ingrained on every little penny. If Greg Sauter says buy this, they will buy that. Yet every conversation I had over there ended up with our planner didn't perform. Well, you've got to focus on them fundamental details before you start adding all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Well, get good at what you're good at and go from there. And, on the flip side, I'm going to say part of what we're doing is hereditary. I've been fortunate enough to be on the home farm in Germany. It's almost like a carbon copy of West Union, Iowa. Now, we never met until, I met some of the family in 1994, but I was not over there until about 2019, I think it was. And when you walk on that farm, almost everything I'm doing, they're doing. So we got to stop and think some of this is hereditary, and give a lot of credit. What I've been able to do is up to my dad. He's the one that's opened the doors for me. He invested in things that afforded me the chance to learn.
Yeah. And
not being afraid to take that chance to test that hypothesis. Will this work? Can I make this work? If I needed something, I built it. That
right.
low budget has been kind of part of our mantra for a long time.
Yeah. Now, let's shift into, there's a lot of talk right now about how are we going to get every acre covered with a cover crop. Okay. I don't think that's realistically possible. That would be great if we could get that done. But Loran, what do you see as the stumbling blocks to either A, get more traditional type farmers to try some of these methods? What about supplies of cover crops? What about teachers out there teaching? What do you think about, if tomorrow somebody came up with a plan to cut, let's do half of the corn and soybean acres in the United States, what do you see as problems with that?
I think if we could figure out how to make it cash flow, it'd be easy. And that's been the hard part for a lot of people. They focus on the expense of the cover crop instead of the actual value of the cover crop.
Yeah.
I'm going to share some slides tomorrow on what cereal rye has done to us just bushel wise. The meeting we're going in tomorrow is we're going to be dealing with the black dirt mafia.
Sure.
We're looking at baby steps tomorrow. How can we help these guys have that first experience be a success?
That's right. And let me hold you right there. This is critical. If you're rolling into an area where they hardly know what the word cover crop means, if you get these folks into a situation where this does not work, they're not coming back, Loran. They are not. So you are exactly right. Success has to be right out of the gate that first year.
Yep. And some of what I'm going in tomorrow is going to be compliments of going to Ukraine. I haven't talked strip till for over 5 years, but I had to hurry up and throw together a presentation on strip till for Ukraine. Now, when I walked into Ukraine, I would say 80 to 90% of the Ukraine is still moldboard plowed.
Wow.
I mean, these are people that haven't even heard of the rainfall simulator, the Haney test, none of that. You know, so when Loran Steinlage walks up on stage, I did put pants on that way, by the way. But, you know, when I walk on stage and, you know, they wanted to hear strip till, but they also wanted to hear some of what the potential is. You know, one of the best questions I had towards the end of the presentation is like, Loran, what do you think you can offer us? I said, I think if we sit down and exchange some ideals, we can probably cut 15 years off of your learning curve. Because what I seen there was 1970s.
That's important. That is important.
But we're not going to take them right to relay cropping. We're not going to take them, you know, we're going to set that goal out there so they start looking at that long-term goal. But we're going to start simple. You know, let's get the cereal rye ahead of the soybeans. Let's get something into the corn, you know, figure out something for the corn. If I have to, we're going to go in and strip till, because is it the perfect tool? No, but it is a good, comfortable tool for a guy that's moldboard plowing, because we can maintain yield.
Start to think about transitioning toward no-till.
Yes, and I mean we got to take them baby steps, because it all goes back to, if we fail that first step, not only are we going to lose that guy for a couple of years, but we're going to lose the guy down the road, the guy at the coffee shop, everybody in the 10-mile area.
Yeah.
Because so-and-so down the road had a bad experience.
Yeah.
And, you know,
that's exactly right.
You know, that's probably a little different than a lot of guys are going to come out here and tell you, but I think we all, you know, it goes back to what I said earlier. We can't shame anybody into doing anything. We've got to show them success and back it up with our own successes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jimmy, what do you think about the original question? There was, you know, we want to move forward and get acres covered. You know, I think you got to be realistic too, and you've got to look at what would be a successful amount of acres. And I've often thrown out 20 to 25%. You know, if you could get those amount of acres on board, then I think what happens, if you get the teachers, you get the people in the right places, you have success, I think then it just slowly starts to take over in that area, and it just moves on its own then, because like Loran was just saying, you get the opposite effect of a failure over here, and everyone's going to say, see, I told you that wasn't going to work. You get that opposite effect where, hey, Bob tried this, look what he's doing now. Now let's start to move this out across more acres. So what do you think, Jimmy? Did we lose Jimmy? We might have lost him. Well, sorry about that.
Well, in realistic terms, there's no way we have enough seed stock base to cover every acre. Can you hear me?
You're cutting
Yeah.
out, but I think you're saying that we don't
Can
have
you
the
hear me?
amount of cover crop seeds to cover the amount of acres that you went to.
Yeah, I think I'm back now. Can you hear me, Rick?
Yes, go, Jimmy.
So realistically, we don't have the cover crop seed stock to cover all the acres. So we're not going to get there even if we wanted to right away.
Right.
But I agree with you. 20 to 30% is very realistic. If we push hard, I think we can get there. And then that gives great opportunity for growers to grow something other than the traditional commodity that they've been growing. There's lots of opportunities to grow cover crop seeds, whatever that is, across this country. And back to that yield a while ago, my banker has never asked me how much I made in yield. He always asked me how much money did I bring in to pay him. And we don't even discuss yield. So why is yield so important? And in this new era, if we can get another 20-30% of producers to start covering their soil, opens up a new opportunity to grow something other than traditional commodities. So I totally agree with you, Rick. I think 25-30% is a great goal. I think we can hit in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, yeah, and I want everyone to understand that yield's important. You got to have yield. We know that, but it's not what's driving any of our systems. It's all of these things about building soil health, building human health, and reduction of inputs and all of that. So um, let's see. I don't know why my brain, I need to write these questions out. Jimmy, when you talk, you spark about 2 questions and I need to start writing them down. But
I'm sorry I had that effect on some people
well,
sometimes.
that's okay. Maybe you need to just keep talking and then I'll get a question back. But um, so yeah, so Loran, tell me, I'm going to ask both of you this same question now. And again, nobody knows that I'm going to ask this. Loran doesn't know I'm going to ask him this question. Loran, I want you to tell me who has been some of your mentors, or maybe mentor might not be the right word, but who have been those people that have really gotten you in this mindset and down this journey of being a good steward to the land and a regenerative minded individual?
I would say probably the most influential has been Garth Mulkey of GS3 Seeds. I mean, if it wouldn't been for him, I probably never would have met Dave Brent. I wouldn't have met Dan DeSutter. I wouldn't have met Terry Taylor. I probably wouldn't have met Rick Clark. And, it just, once you meet that right person, it kind of just starts snowballing from there. And, but with that said, that was one of the hardest ones, a couple of years ago when Garth had a little issue with his son. I wanted to be there, but it was one of those deals. I couldn't be there at the time for him. And I mean, we've become very good friends over the year. And, there's been a few other key people along the ways, but I would say he was kind of the pivotal turning point, and then 2014, when Dave Brent shows up in your place, that was one of the validating moments.
That's a big deal. When Dave shows up, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and then next one was Jill Clapperton shows up out in my field one day, and the one night we had 5 PhD people, I think it was, or 4 or 5, I don't remember it was, but Jill Clapperton's down on the floors, crawling on the ground, and she's like, "You ain't supposed to see this stuff here," and it's just like, cool. And it's them little moments are what drives a guy to keep pushing a little bit. And like I said, I think I told the other day, probably the most humbling moment is when you open yourself up and you start sharing. You quickly realize it's a vicious cycle. The minute I started sharing, people started sharing with me, and then it just keeps building.
It's that community we talked about at the beginning, the camaraderie, the community, the openness. It's all, I mean, we could have a whole episode on, I don't like to use the word failure. I use outcomes we didn't expect. And that probably would be a valuable episode to have, but I don't mind talking about those things because it's real. I mean, everything out here is not candy canes and lollipops. And if you think it is and you think you got this figured out, you're way wrong.
Well, Rick, nothing's easy to start with. None of us come out talking, walking, and running. We had to learn that one step at a time, and that's where we're at in this system. Do we have it all figured out, the 3 of us? No, we don't. But we've got a lot more figured out than we did 5 or 10 years ago, and it's just a learning curve. And I tell a lot of people, I get one problem solved that I'm really comfortable about, and I open another door of 3. And I work on them 3, and I get them 3 figured out, 2 more open up. But that's the fun part. That's the energizing part, that we're still moving forward in our thought process and our problem solving. That's what we really do, is we work on problem solving. We don't give up. We try to fix what we can, and move forward. And you
Right.
know, that I think that's key. But then I think we got to really key in on it's all about the health of the soil, is the health of our plants and the health of our bodies. I think that's the future of what's really going to drive us, is a healthy systems approach creates a healthy system in the big sense.
Yeah, you're not going to have human health until we have soil health. It's just that
Amen.
simple.
Well,
It's
and
that
I
simple.
think that's one thing we're all starting to hit, that time frame of life when we start realizing what we've all sacrificed to get here.
Yeah.
You know, I'm far from the perfect picture of human health, but we're working on it. I mean, you know, we've done some dumb things over the years, and we're paying the price. But the good news is there's still recourse, so we got time. And
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about human health. You know, we spend so much time on our systems and and everything with farming, and sometimes we let the things go to the side that we shouldn't. And I was a very big hypocrite in this. I did not have a very good diet away from home. My wife, my beautiful wife, Carol, had wonderful meals for me at home. But when I'm on the road or I'm in the field, I'm going to grab a Mountain Dew and I'm going to eat a piece of pizza. I'm going to do all this. Well, folks, long story short, I turned myself into a type 2 diabetic just based on the food that I was eating away from home. Well, as a result of that, I mean, you know, boom, that's when you don't realize how important health is until you don't have it anymore. So I made drastic changes. Carol changed my diet. We got a little exercise regimen going on. I'm proud to say that I'm no longer on any insulin. I'm not on any medication. So all this can be done. So Lauren, what, I mean, and you know, before I go to you, Lauren, I want to say one more thing. You know, I think the other way you look at human health is all of these pesticides and herbicides and insecticides that we put our bodies in and contaminate. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not going to let the generation of Mike and Carol's children and then now our grandchildren, we're not going to be in that world. So that's how I look at human health. And then also the nutrient density of the food that we're creating. That's what Jimmy was alluding to a few minutes ago. You've got to have soil health to get to that higher density levels in our food. Take it away, Lauren.
oh shoot, I mean, I guess what was coming to my mind is I'm going to take you all the way back to, I think it was 1983. I was hit broadside by a semi.
Yeah. How old were you?
I was 14.
14.
And it was one of those deals. I was a proud peacock. Dad, first time he let me drive the 4440, and you know, right there in town, I was hit broadside. But that right there is the pivotal point in my career.
Yeah.
You know, because over the next 10 years working with livestock and all them, over the, you know, my body started rebelling, and you know, now it's to the point where I can't be around livestock and that, because I can actually pick up livestock disease. And you know, none of you can take all that away from me until about a year ago at Christmas. You know, the daughters both think they have to have dogs in the house, so it got to the point I can't even go to the daughters' houses. But even that didn't bother me a lot until my little buddy Oliver shows up at our place one day, and I could start to feel it on him. And you know, John Kemp's wife, she had been there the summer before, and we talked with her. And I'll admit, I was the first guy to think some of that stuff was a little out there. But when you're out of options, you'll try things. And you know, within a couple of weeks of getting on some of the holistic healing things she had me on, boom, I can go back to the daughters' houses and all that. And you know, I'm going to take a full circle because we're not that smart. You know, this winter, all of a sudden, I had another grandkid, and I go to the daughter's house. And all of a sudden, I can feel the dogs on it again. Brenna's like, "Well, we've got to get you re-upped on the stuff and that you're out." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Bingo!"
Yep.
And
Yep.
you know, the neat part is, back to Ukraine. our translator over there has some really cool stuff. She was talking, I was messaging John Kemp about some of that, so it's going to be something to see where some of that comes.
Yeah. But now, Lauren, think about those parallels there that you just laid out between what John's wife was trying to do to help you and then what you're trying to do to help the soil.
Yep.
It's all there. It's all there. So now we just heard that from a guy who farms in an I state. So now, Jimmy, what's your take on human health, soil health, everything we just talked about?
One of the greatest things that's happened to me, Rick, in the last couple of years is meeting Aaron Martin out of the Tulsa area. And Aaron started a Fresh RX program up there with a medical clinic with 50 diabetic patients that had A1Cs in double digits, 13 and a half, and 14s, terrible A1C levels. The doctor said something's got to give. I want to go into a Fresh RX program where I can prescribe fresh local vegetables. They raised $250,000 up there, got 50 patients in that trial with the medical clinic. And 6 months into it now, them patients are in single digit numbers, half of where they were on half of the medication, and some of them less than that. So it just proved to me instantly that we can turn this around. And just like you, I mean, it's amazing what we can do when we do eat the right things, and they are nutritious and they're local and they're fresh and they're really good. Now, that's hard to find in the society that we're at, because every corner, there's a fast food and good sweets and plenty of fountain drinks and stuff. And I'm guilty of that. That sin once in a while, more than I should. But it really energizes me to see what we can do in our health, human health, with the health of our soils. And so I'm working with them producers up there that's growing them fresh vegetables and fruits for that RX program. And it's really re-energized me to a totally new level, and a light has really come on to what we can do.
Well, yeah, and you see, Jimmy, as that area right there you're talking about becomes successful, then that will migrate to other parts of the world, and now you just start to really slowly build this engine, and you now start to raise the human health. I'm 58 years old, and if I follow what Carol wants me to do, which I do 98% of the time, I have never felt better than I do right now. I've lost 10 or 15 pounds. I've got more energy. I have that mental capacity now to think better. I feel like that the lifestyle we're living is a better, healthier lifestyle. So it just clears your mind up on everything.
Sure. And that's what we see in all these patients. And like you said, it's just building one block at a time. The Hoover Dam was built in blocks, one at a time. And that's what we got to do here with the Fresh RX program, or I would like to call it pharmacy with an F. And I really like that term, and I think that we can really show that. And once again, it gets us out of a different paradigm as well, to start growing things that we've never grown before, with a great market opportunity there.
Right.
I want to take you back quick to, I started in 1983, but I want to take you to the year 1993. By that time, they had me on so many different drugs that I believe that was the same year the anthrax scare at the White House, if you remember that.
Oh yeah.
Well, one of the drugs they put you on was ciprofloxacin. Now the doses they had me on at that time basically sterilized my body, and it weakened my immune system to the point where I had no immune system and stuff like that. So that was all part of the diagnosis, trying to figure out what was actually going on to me. But when, early on, we were talking about the principles of soil health.
Right.
Has anybody put together the principles of human health yet?
Yeah.
Extreme chemical and physical disturbance is a big part of what's ruining some of our human health.
Right. Yeah. Well, guys, I never know who's in the audience. So the next question I want to ask you is, I'll start with you, Lauren. If you were going to make a recommendation to someone that's in your region of growing the crops and the systems that you have, how would you suggest that a person get started?
Part of that's going to depend on where they're starting from. But I mean, if we're talking a conventional grower,
Yeah.
like I've said earlier, we're going to start simple. Let's talk cereal rye ahead of soybeans.
Right. I love that.
Well, and bear in mind, I'm in the heart of Corn Belt, so 90% of my neighbors are going to be corn bean rotation, the others being corn on corn rotation.
Right.
And if we can at least get them guys ahead of soybeans doing the cereal rye, I'll count that up as a win. Now, the guys west of me, I would advise them. That's where we're going to start talking the strip till, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
East of me, that's going to be the biggest challenge as we start going into the hills and stuff like that. That's what I kind of hit on the other day. My in-laws are very good farmers, and that. How do I help them understand some of what's going on? And that's going to be the personal struggle here. We're starting to go down, and I think I'm getting some good ideals. But we're going to take baby steps to get there, and ease them into it is about the biggest thing I can emphasize. And not everybody's going to dive right into what I'm the kind of person, I'm going to try something behind the scenes for probably 3 years at minimum before I tell anybody what I'm doing. And then when we hit, we're going full board pretty quick. So it looks like we're pretty risky what we do, but
yeah,
you've got to get that mindset. How far can you push yourself?
Right. Right. Well, now Jimmy, help me out again, guys. Lauren, you and Jimmy are how many miles apart from each other?
800.
800. So now let's go 800 miles southwest to Jimmy Emmons, Leedy, Oklahoma. How do you tell a neighboring farmer that comes to you and says, Jimmy, I got to do something different. How do I get started? What are we doing?
Start slow, small acreage, do side-by-side comparisons. Don't start with a big mix like where I'm at. Start, like Lauren said, a single, maybe 2 or 3 warm seasons in a mix. Very slow. Just try to learn to walk a little bit before you start a marathon.
Right.
I had a producer here today said, well, I want to plant corn behind cereal rye, or I want to do what Rick Clark's doing and planting corn and alfalfa. And I said, don't start there. That's for the not for the weak of heart. And if you don't have a success there, you're going to be very, very frustrated. And the chances of success there where you're at in your system is very, very minimal. So, start where you need to start, slow and steady, and start them side by side comparisons in the field and see the change happening and recognize the change happening. And if you see that in your field, you see the changing of the soil, the darkness, the earthworms, the aggregation, the chocolate cake look starting, then you get energized yourself, because there's nothing like seeing it in front of you in your own space, in your own place. And I believe once you do that, then you understand where you're at and you're ready now for the next step.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump on that, Jimmy, with a couple thoughts of my own. You think back of how long we've been on this journey, and we have reduced synthetic inputs. We started about, I don't know, 11 years ago, and now we're heading into year 8 where we've not used any P or K or ag lime. So you can't think going into this that you're going to just change and start your whole farm's going to just flip over overnight and we're going to take all the inputs away. It doesn't work like that. It takes years, and you have to look at again the context. Let me give you some context. I'm at the edge of the prairie. We have natural soils at 3.5 to 4.5% organic matter, 2% slope. We have ancestors that care deeply about fertility. So maybe, the current regime is working off of those systems. I don't know, but I do know that we Haney soil health test, and our levels are either staying the same or rising. So I don't think we are in that mining situation. I think there's just thousands of pounds of nutrients below our feet, and we need to figure out how to unlock them. But with that being said, Jimmy in his native world may not ever get to where we are. I don't know that. I'm not a biologist, I'm not an expert in that field, but I'm just saying there are those areas that the inherent natural state is never going to be as great as maybe where the three of us farm.
You're not going to change a desert to utopia up there where Loran lives. It wasn't created that way to start with. And if you think you're going to, you're not living in reality.
Yeah.
We can get back where we were originally, maybe 3%, 4% as a whole in our area. I don't think we're going to get in that 8, 10, 12%. Dr. Rattan Law will tell you that if you can get to your natural state, if you get above that, that's like cream on top of the shake at Sonic. And that cream may last and it may not, but the key is just getting back to that stable base where you originally were. And if you can do that, my gosh, we can do so much more than we've been used to in the past. And I believe that's the key.
Yeah, and Jimmy, you're right. We may not see it in our lifetime, but if we can build this foundation and then hand it off to the next generation, or maybe even in Lauren's instance, the in-laws are coming in, and whatever your situation is, and get those fundamentals taught and let them take it in then to that next level.
Yeah, I believe that's really true, Rick. And I just had a guy text me that I've got some lower bottom land that could compete with you guys. But to put that in context, it would, because it's tons and tons of eroded soil that went down into the bottom land that may have built something that's comparable. But as a whole, I don't think I can compete with you guys just because we weren't there originally, and the erosion was too horrendous here. But
Yeah.
once again, I think that context is very, very important. And I do know in my area, when I can get my soil organic matter to 3%, it's like another switch turns on, and we go from 110 to 480 almost. It's a
Yeah.
really something that changes.
Yeah, Jimmy, one of the things I've seen on our farm change very quickly now, and it's taken years to get here, but when you look at aggregate stability and you measure that in your profile, we were hovering in that 1 to 2 inch area, and then just all of a sudden we've gone to 6 inches. So by totally eliminating tillage, totally eliminating the chemistry, all of these caustic acids and salts and all of these things. Now think what that has done for your engine when you get aggregate stability 6 inches deep, and you've now got all of these pore spaces you now have all kinds of room for that soil to breathe. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. All three of us have talked this whole episode about, basically what we're trying to do is maximize photosynthesis, pump as much sugar and oxygen into the ground we can, and exhaust out CO2 so our cash crops can breathe that CO2 in. I mean, that's what basically everything we're talking about here today. Maximize the free stuff. I mean, think about it. The sun is the most powerful source of energy known to man, and it's free. So we've got to keep every acre covered as long as we possibly can.
And Rick, you really touched on something there that most people don't understand, and it's the biological communities just like us. They have to have oxygen and they have to be able to get rid of their CO2.
Yeah.
You can't breathe inside a paper bag all day long. That's not going to be successful. And you've got to have that gas flow, because them are the partners that we really need to help us free up the minerals and to make this system really work. And once you get that going, like you said, you get that aggregation good, then when you get them big rainfall events, whatever that is, you can take it all. And that's really key.
Well, Jim, I'm going to come to Loran in just a second, but Jim, I always love your answer when your neighbor, you guys just went through a big storm in Oklahoma, which seems to happen quite often. Your neighbor gives you a call and, hey, Jimmy, how much rain did you get? And what's your answer?
I got it all.
I got it all. That's a great answer. What do you think, Loran?
I think one of the biggest misnomers we were taught growing up is removal rates on fertility. Driving out here on I-90 today, biggest thing I saw was the snert.
Yeah.
And, we talk removal rates, but does anybody factor in the erosion?
Yeah.
If we can just stop that, how much more fertility do we have on hand?
Yeah.
And part of my education there goes back to when we first had the greenhouse, and that I started paying attention to the fertility we hauled in versus the produce we hauled out. For every ton of fertility we hauled in, we hauled out 8 tons of produce.
Wow. That's a pretty good ratio.
And probably another 8 tons of dry matter went into the compost pile with the vines and all that stuff. Start asking yourself, where did all that other stuff come from?
Mm-hmm. I think that's what you're defining regeneration.
Yeah, and that's in a sterile system. So that's when you start factoring the biology and that we've built up in that, it's gotta start accounting for something.
You would think so. You would definitely think so. Well, guys, Loran, how would you like to close this up? What would you like to, you got as much time as you want. Give me some closing thoughts here.
Oh, I don't know. I'm hoping the folks listening are, we've got sidetracked so many times and we keep saying we're going to answer the questions. I hope we're answering people's questions.
We've got most of them
answered.
answered.
A list of 100 some questions after the no-till conference. I'm just so pleased how this whole thing, the thing that started out with me and Jimmy saying, hey, let's do something different. Let's can the PowerPoint. Let's just talk to the people.
Yeah.
I hope the listeners appreciate that, because one of the biggest things I appreciate when I'm out seeing people and talking to people is the live Q&A is where you really find out what people want to learn and talk about.
Yes.
But it also tells you, if you start listening to the people, you listen to them key things, it's going to tell you the person that's telling you the truth or the person that's trying to polish the rock. And, I think that's the common denominator between the three of us. We're beyond the shiny bells and all that. Let's help the people that are paying attention and want to learn. If you want the shiny rocks, they're out there. And, let's figure this thing out, because, that's probably one thing I'm looking forward to. The end of the month here, Green Cover's putting on one heck of a good meeting. God, I can't wait for that one. When you get probably 80 of the best minds out there. That's going to be fun.
Yeah. All right, Jimmy, what are your thoughts here to, maybe not necessarily just what we talked about today, but just what are your closing take home thoughts? Jimmy, are you there?
I don't think he's here.
Well, we're
We
gonna
have
we're
Farm
gonna
Green on social.
we're gonna wrap this up. And I just cannot thank Loran and Jimmy enough for being on the inaugural podcast of Farm Green. Guys, thank you so much. This has been a blast. I always enjoy speaking with you guys. Loran, you always have a different way to look at things, and that's why I so enjoy talking to you, because we don't always think the same, and that's good to have someone that energizes you to think about differently. And Jimmy, you are in a whole different world than I live in. I can't imagine living in a world where you could only get 6 or 8 inches of rain. I just, it's too much to fathom. So
I keep blaming my granddad for stopping where he stopped at. It's like, could you went on somewhere else? But we were going to play the cards that's dealt us, Rick. And I'm sorry I cut out a while ago. But what I really want people to understand is we're not, or I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy that's trying to figure it out, and I want to share. I want to learn. Much like we done in school together, we're going to sit down side by side, and if we got to look off one another's sheet once in a while, what's wrong with that? Let's get through this and figure it out ourselves. And like I always say, long live the soil. Let's do it together.
Right. Well, guys, thank you so much.
Please.
And
it's been an honor to be on the first one, because I know some of the next guests you got coming. It's going to be fun.
It will be. Please follow Farm Green on social. Here, you can scan it on your phone. You can hold your phone up, look up, take a picture, and follow them on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of the social media.
thank you so much. I hope this was what people want. I want this to be free, casual. I want it to be live. And we got a lot of questions that we got from the audience. So thank you again, and hang on for next week, because it's Dr. Jerry Hatfield. That man is the carbon master. So this is going to be a good one. So everybody, again, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.